Welcome, welcome, friends. This is Robert Kugler coming to you live from the Four Leaf Publishing home offices with the first of what I hope is a recurring feature that we're going to start featuring here on the site and on our YouTube page and on in our bi-weekly newsletters. So anyway, hope this finds you and yours doing well. I've got a nice queue of questions that you've all sent in over the last couple of months, and I'm going to try to maybe tackle about 4 of them today, and then we'll have another 4 in the newsletter from 2 weeks from now, and we'll see how it goes. I do get a lot of these, and a lot of them, at least for today's questions, a lot of them are kind of the same questions, so I figure I will tackle a few of those. We've been talking about trying to do more audio, and after the recent class I taught a couple of months ago, we put that audio up on the webpage and the YouTube for you. I hope you enjoyed that. If not, you can go check it out. But let's get started. The first question, I can't really attribute this to one person because it's absolutely the question that I get most frequently from readers, and it is, will I ever write another Avery and Angela novel? I get that one, several times a month, and I enjoy it, but let's see if I can give it a fair answer here. The short-term answer is probably not now, but I won't say not ever. I adore those characters. I had such a good time writing those books. And when I wrote the first novel, The Last Good Day, I had not really envisioned it as a series at all. To me, it was a standalone story that really just told Avery and Angela's story about that day and what that day ended up meaning and what that day led to. I won't spoil anything just in case you're new here and maybe haven't read through the whole series. But once I had finished the book and it was published and it did pretty well, I had started actually working on the book that I'm actually still currently working on, which is the Freddie Pinkerton story. And that is the subject of a later question. We'll probably get to that one in next week's, in the next Q&A. But I found that the characters weren't kind of leaving me alone to write that story. Avery in particular seemed to keep popping into my head saying, you know what, you're not done with me yet. And so at that point I kind of started thinking maybe this is a trilogy. And then about halfway through the third book, When Only Love Remains, I realized I am not going to be able to get all this done in this book. So that's why it then moved into a 4-part series. So none of that was my intention at the time. But as the story came to me, I think it told itself in an interesting way. And I like very much where we leave them at the end of book 4. I think about them a lot. I do have story ideas for the future if I wanted to go back to that. But at the moment, I have so many other characters that are living rent-free in my head that won't kind of let me go without them having their turn. So I think if there ever is another book, it'll probably be a bit in the future, and it will probably be in the bit of Avery and Angela's future. I don't see myself writing something that linearly connects right to the end of book 4, which again I'm very, very satisfied with the way that one felt coming out of the pen, they say. But putting that one on page. When I've had cause to look at that book again and I see the way it ends, I'm very satisfied with them there. I like the sense of hope. I like the sense of possibility. So the short answer is not anytime soon, but if I do, it would probably be them, as adults, maybe 5, maybe 10 years later. Who knows where their story will go. But I do still think about them, and I appreciate whenever I get that question, because that means that, the series resonated with you, and that means a lot to me. It was really my first novel out in the world. I have so much affection for it. It's where I kind of learned how to do this. And just whenever I get feedback, positive or negative, I really do appreciate it, because it meant someone cared enough to not only read the book, obtain the book, and then look at the back matter, figure out how to get in touch with me if they're not already on the newsletter, and then take the time to ask those questions. So I always do my best to answer whenever you all write in, even if it's just hey, thanks so much, I'm gonna answer this soon. But I love the fact we're closing in on 6,000 members on this list, and I love that. It grows and it shrinks every couple of weeks. Some people leave, some people come in, but I really do love the community that we've built here. So I appreciate it when you all send these questions in. But that's the one I get most of all. And again, probably not anytime soon, but I won't say never, because I have such affection for the characters, and I'm curious. I'm curious what you think happens to them in the future. So feel free to send me on your theories or fanfic ideas, and I always enjoy getting those. Second question here. This one came in recently from Darla in Vineland, New Jersey. Okay, Vineland. I think that's like the home of the last drive-through movie theater in South Jersey, and my kids really want to go there this summer, so we might be heading your way there, Darla. But Darla's question is, you mentioned other series bonus chapters in the past. Whatever happened to those? Yeah, I had initially planned to release a series of sort of bonus chapters, kind of like The Day Before. The Day Before, if you haven't seen it, is a free, perma-free prequel that's available on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble, and through my website, robertkuglerbooks.com, where basically it's like the night before, and it's Avery sort of reflecting on like what's going to happen the next day. So it's what we call a reader magnet. It's a way to get people interested that maybe hadn't seen the story before. We set it up in lots of different giveaway groups to give away for free. And I had originally planned and started actually writing a few. One which was going to be just a night that Avery and Randall go out to play clubs up in Boston. They hop on the T, which is their version of the train system up there, and they just go off and have an evening. And I have an idea for it, and I've actually written several pages of it, but then I felt like it was pulling away from some of my other writings, so I kind of put a little pin in that for then, and I haven't had the real motivation to go back to it at this point. As much as I do love those series books, I am sort of moving in a different direction. My next couple of books are probably not going to be YA. Geography of Home, which came out last year, is a more adult literary kind of novel, sort of family drama as well. So as I heard from a few readers, there's some bad words on the first page, and some of my YA fans didn't love that, so sorry about that. But I am kind of moving away from YA at this point, so I kind of felt like maybe I'd circle back on that in the future. But it was an idea we had. We thought maybe we'd do a series of 2 or 3. There was one idea I had about a short little vignette with Marnie and Freddie from the series as well. And I actually get a lot of I get a lot of readers that ask if there's ever going to be more, if there could ever be something more about Avery's father. Again, don't want to spoil anything here, but I've had some thoughts on that too. But I think for now, I'm going to let that series kind of be for the moment. But again, a lot of affection for it. I love those characters. It would almost feel like going back into a place where I'm too comfortable as a writer to go back to write more there. I want to keep kind of pushing myself to explore some other areas. And I've got so many other ideas. I've got 4 or 5 different novels in different states of completion, and I want to get a couple of those done before I really get myself back in that mindset. But I appreciate the question. Again, it's one of those things that when I see those, it makes me realize that the series has really resonated with a great many of you, and that is exceptionally meaningful for me because I have a lot of affection for those characters too. So then my next question. Okay, I like this one. This is from Chris in Mobile, Alabama. And it's will you revisit the characters in Geography of Home? Okay, so a lot of sequel-y questions today. The short answer to that is probably not, but what's funny is that if you do know or you don't know the background for Geography of Home, it was actually chronologically the first novel I ever wrote. I began working on that in 2008 when we lived in Hawaii. My wife's job had taken us there, and I left whatever careers I had at the time to be a stay-at-home dad. And the original book was very much like what you see on the page now that I ended up revisiting 20 years later. We made some big changes. We changed the ending and stuff. But originally, and I probably have 4 or 5 chapters of what was going to be a sequel to Geography of Home. Because when I'd finished it, I wanted to keep writing. I wasn't quite ready to do what became The Last Good Day. So I kind of just continued that story. So there's about 5, maybe 6 chapters that follow Alexander Underwood and his family in the new life that they attain at the end of Geography of Home. So it was going to be called Sunrise on Diamond Head. And I've been a little afraid to go revisit those chapters because I was a very, very different writer then. That would have been 2010. So, a decent amount of time has passed. So I won't say no, that I won't ever. At some point, I will. Usually when I'm getting ready to publish a book, I send it to the beta team, and I take like a 2-week break from whatever that beta book is, And that's usually a time that I go back and I revisit some of the old stuff and see, is there something still here? Is there something? It's kind of like my vacation writing. Like it's almost like I'm cheating on my work in progress with these other things, but it's sort of a structured time. And if I get there with the Freddie Pinkerton book, that's one of two projects I really want to revisit and see if there's anything there. Probably just as a bonus chapter. I don't know that I would write a whole book there because, again, I was very satisfied with where we got Alexander and his family at the end of Geography of Home. I really like the ending that is in the book now. Was a new ending. It was a new sort of epilogue ending to their story. And I really like where we left them. I think it's clean. I think it doesn't it leaves some questions, but nothing that I think is dramatic that a reader would be like, oh God, I need to know this. It's certainly not a cliffhanger like I did in book 2 and 3 of the Avery Angela series, and I do periodically get some very vibrantly worded complaints about that. But at least now you all have the books that you can go and continue on to read with. When those books were first coming out, when book 2 came out and there's kind of a shocking ending, you had a good 6 months to wait for me to finish book 3. And I heard about that from a lot of you. I heard a lot of that from my children as well, who were among my early readers. I can still remember the sound of my eldest daughter screaming at me from down the hall when she read the end of book 2. And we still laugh about that. But in terms of the characters from Geography, I'd love to be able to spend a little more time with Charlotte in particular. And I actually like very much the Eliza and Micah storyline. That would be something that I'd like to take a deeper look at them if I were going to do a deep dive and make a reader magnet connected to that story. Those are some characters there that I might enjoy looking at. And okay, so the last one I think I'm going to look at today is from Claire, and it just says Montana. So I don't know where in Montana. I've not been to Montana. I've heard it's lovely. But thanks for sending this question, Claire. She asks, do I ever get comments from people who are in or living in the places or from the places that I'm writing about? Yeah, because I try to keep my books grounded in not only real places, but real places that I know and have lived. So Avery Angela series is based in, we call it Windsor in the book, but it's basically the Hightstown, East Windsor area of New Jersey. I grew up there. Obviously, there's a ton in Wildwood in both the Avery Angela series and in Geography of Home. Wildwood makes an appearance too. Those are places I kind of grew up. My family and I still spend a load of time in Wildwood, New Jersey. It's the best beach on the East Coast. Highly recommended. And actually, the Freddie Pinkerton book is taking place pretty much exclusively in Moorestown, which is a North Jersey town where my wife and I lived when we were first married. I find it comforting to put the stories in the places that I've been because I can speak to them. I can, Google Maps really helps to kind of see how things are laid out in the towns now. So I do use that a decent amount in my research. But I just feel like for me, it adds a sense of real time and place to the story to put it somewhere that I know well enough to write about from a real visceral standpoint, and some of the little colorful aspects of things like in book 1 there's the sort of the flash mob dance party outside at the light outside the old money store and the Cardooner's liquor store. Like that's if people that I do hear from people from those areas, especially people that I know who read that and like, oh, I remember that store, or well, when did that go away? I hear a lot from people who know Wildwood well, though, to be honest with you. And one of the favorite things that I hear from people in Wildwood about is in both, actually, no, in Avery and Angela, in the first book, Avery visits the Anchor Inn, which was a real place. It's not there anymore. Which makes me exceptionally sad because it was my wife and I's absolute favorite restaurant bar in all of explored space. It was the greatest of all time. It went away about 20 years ago, but I figure it's my fictional world and I can bring it back. And I actually ran into recently the gentleman who owned the Anchor Inn and told him about that story, and I sent him a copy of the book, which he really got a kick out of to see, because he's in the book. He and the people that work there, they're pretty generic names and I use them. And so I've never really gotten what I'd call a complaint. Like, why did you use this? I remember this person. Occasionally I'll get an email from someone who will say like, hey, I see you use this name. Is this who you were thinking of? And it might be somebody I went to high school with. And and stuff. And periodically, for names for me have to come from somewhere. So generally, they have a story as to where that name came from. But I remember I met Pulitzer Prize winner Richard Russo, wrote Nobody's Fool and a bunch of that. I met him at a conference a few years ago. And, we were talking, and I asked him, because I had published Last Good Day, I was getting ready to do more books in that series, so I was getting a little deeper into the weeds with sort of the central South Jersey area where I grew up. We were branching out into Lawrenceville a little bit. We got into Princeton later in the series as well. And I asked him, I said, you're writing about real places that you're from. I said, do you ever get grief from people back home? And he said, not really. He's like, but here's what I would suggest, is that if you think it's so sensitive, or you're using a name or a place that's going to be so sensitive, just change it a little bit. Change it 20%. For example, that's where I grew up in East Windsor, New Jersey, but in the book we just call it Windsor. And instead of it being Hightstown High School, we call it Windsor High School. It allows for a level of anonymity for me to then say, yeah, it's kind of based on it, but then, it's not really it. But then if you get into book 4, where Avery's, visiting Mr. Amos, the money guy, and his daughter, the lawyer, right on Main Street in Hightstown. Like, I describe Main Street in Hightstown exactly how Main Street in Hightstown looks right now, because it looks exactly the way it did when I was in high school. The Shoe Buckle is a real place. The, Petty Lake and the pharmacy on the corner, which again, those aren't major storyline aspects of the story, but to me, like, when I read them, they just read truer because they're true. And I get kind of a kick out of including these time and places that I don't live there anymore. Like, I haven't lived in my hometown since 1995. It's been a very long time, but I have a lot of friends that are still there. I've been back to visit people. I've been back for reunions. Like, it's always fun to revisit, but my life has moved elsewhere from there. But I feel like it's pleasant to go back and remember in a positive way. And sometimes in a negative way, but just taking the visceral nature of a place I know well and allowing that to get onto the page, to me, that really, I enjoy doing it. I'll probably continue doing it. The Freddie Pinkerton book, like I said, is set in Morristown, New Jersey. I think right now I've got about 70 to 75% of the book done. We haven't left Morristown. I don't think we will. So Morristown, my hope is that it feels as much like a character in the story as I feel like Wildwood did when I was writing Last Good Day, and actually with Geography of Home as well. So we're going to stop there for today. That's 4 questions. Thanks again to all of you who sent them in, including Darla, Chris, and Claire. I will be back in our next newsletter in a couple of weeks I've got 4 more good ones, but please send more. I really enjoy doing this. It takes actually a little less time for me to do it this way than it does for me to type out answers and include them in the newsletter. So hopefully you all enjoy this. Through the newsletter, you can always reply back. It gets right to me. I always reply to every email that you send me. You can reach me on my socials, on the Facebook page as well, robert@robertkuglerbooks.com. Thanks so much for being a part of this amazing community. Enjoy this week's wide collection of This Week in Free Books, and please also enjoy our guest author this week. And if you have questions, you have things you want to see in the newsletter, if there's other books that you're interested in, and again, if you have other questions, please send them on, because this actually was a lot of fun, and it didn't take very long. So have a great rest of your week. I'll be back with you in about 2 weeks with more. But in the meantime, happy reading. See you next time.